The hour being after 7:30, I would like to reconvene the March 13th school committee meeting to order. According to the governor's order, we will still be operating under the COVID provisions, and that means that we're operating remotely this evening, and all votes will be taken by roll call vote. So I don't believe I need to do attendance, since we did start the meeting at 7 o'clock and then go into executive session. So I'm going to say that that brings us to the very first order of business, which is a recognition, Dr. Goff.
Yes, I know Madison Field couldn't be here, but I know Brendan is his rep tonight, and they are our graduating school committee representatives. So we just wanted to show our appreciation for their commitment that they provided the school committee throughout this year and other years, and to the community with all of these valuable updates on student body events. So tonight, we'd like to recognize Madison and Brendan and wish them well in the future. I believe next fall, Madison will be attending Assumption College, and Brendan will be attending Boston College. So congratulations. And if they were in person, they would each get a certificate. So I will come down to the school, Brendan and Madison, and hand out your certificates representing the school committee. And then we also have a signed book, Profiles in Courage by Kennedy. So you'll be getting that too. So I'll open it up for school committee if they had anything that they would like to add.
I'm going to start because I just think you're one of the best kids around, Brendan, partially because you have been willing to open yourself up to us and really share your the things that matter to you, the things that you think make Walpole High what it is. And I think you gave us a really good lens for many years into the high school, and we really appreciate that. And to hear that you're going to Boston College means that I might even be trying to reach out to you in a non-creepy way, because sometimes we go to football games and have a tailgate. So you never know, you might be hearing from us sometime in the future. But all the best, and we hope very much that that you do stay in touch, because it's a good thing to know how things are working out for our graduates. So congratulations, and thank you for many years of coming to the school committee. So we appreciate it. And Mr. Buckley would like to go next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You start your life in public service, freshman, sophomore, presenting to the school committee, you end up tailgating with the school committee chair a few years later. Life takes funny turns. But just want to congratulate you on your service. And I think there's a Latin phrase, which I love, which is called vox populi, which is the voice of the people. And you may not really kind of fully, it may seem like, you come here, you speak to us, but you really are so representative, and you speak for so many students. And I think you're a great resource for us. You have been in the past, not just in these settings, but we've reached out to you with some other kind of really critical school-related issues to get the pulse. And I think, I know you're on Stuco as well, and you found opportunities to serve in many different ways. And I know that, that just doesn't happen by accident. I know it happens because you were raised well. I know it happens because of the great education you've got here. And I think people like yourself who are wired to do that, who are wired to do good, have really bright futures ahead of them. And it's always exciting this time of year to wish people well. And we hope, I won't be seeing you at BC tailgates, that's for sure. Maybe if they play Providence, maybe we'll see. But I just want to wish you the best. And thank you for the resource you've been to us, which has been invaluable.
Carrie.
As a fellow Eagle, I'm thrilled you're going to Boston College. And as soon as I heard Dr. Goff say that's where you're going, what immediately popped into my mind was the BC motto, which is men and women for others. Because I thought how fitting for Brendan Mahoney to go to a school where that is the motto, because you clearly provided so much service to your school community and the Walpole community, not just as a school committee rep, but as Mr. Buckley said, student council. I know you've been involved in Best Buddies, and you were part of the renaming committee and lots of other things. So you are on a tremendous path forward. We're really grateful for all your service, and we can't wait to see what you accomplish in the future. So very well done, and congratulations.
How about you, Brendan? It's your moment. Do you have anything before you give your report, but do you have anything you want to say as you're sort of finishing up your 4 years at the high school?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, first of all, to all of you for having me here all these times. It's been awesome for me just to be here and not only give the report, but I feel like I've learned a lot from being here, just listening to the meetings and stuff. It's been a great experience, and yeah, I've definitely enjoyed doing this. So thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you, and keep being that same person and take the opportunities as they come. You'll do some great things. We know it.
Brendan, you may bump into Mr. Hahn because he'll be completing his final year in the doctoral program at Boston College. So maybe you'll bump into him on campus.
And I've never been invited to a tailgate yet either, Brendan. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Hey, Bill Buckley might even make the call make the list one of these days. You never know. Great job, though, Brendan. Thanks for everything. And I think with that, we will turn it over to you to do the student report. So, again, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is Brendan Mahoney, and I'm a senior at Walpole High School. School's starting to wrap up for students at Walpole High with many end-of-year events and activities happening soon. The last day of school for seniors is May 25th, while for the rest of the students, it is June 17th. AP exams have been taking place during the last week and this week, and there's a few more exams to finish up next week. The MCAS for sophomores will take place on May 26th and 27th for English, and June 1st and 2nd for math. Spring sports at Walpole High School are in full swing at this point, with girls lacrosse, boys lacrosse, girls golf, and baseball all having games today, while boys tennis and the track and field team had games yesterday. And the spring season will continue to last into June and beyond due to the delayed start from this year. And additionally, registration for fall sports opened last week, I believe. So you can sign up for fall sports. Student Council has been working on distributing senior yard signs with personalized students' names for all seniors at no cost, and seniors can pick those up outside the front of the school this week or next week from 8 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Student Council has also organized the senior elementary school visit on May 24th for all seniors to visit their elementary schools, and that will take place during blocks A and B. And Student Council will also be holding its officer elections next week. Clubs at Walpole High School are also holding end-of-year events. For Best Buddies, we're holding our last event of the year, which will be an outdoor event with an ice cream truck and bingo on Monday, May 17th. National Honor Society has been compiling videos for the virtual induction ceremony for the class of 2022. Then that video will be released in the coming weeks. The film festival will be taking place on Turco Field tomorrow, May 14th, as well as May 21st, which is the red carpet date. So make sure you purchase your tickets for the shows ahead of time and online, because there will be no tickets sold at the door. And make sure you bring your own chairs or blankets. Triumph Music Honor Society will be having a Pops Night concert in the courtyard at the high school on May 19th. And finally, Senior Night, featuring yearbook signings, food trucks, music, trivia, inflatables, and more, will be taking place on June 2nd from 6 to 9 p.m. for seniors. And I think that's all I have, so thank you all.
Wow, that's a lot. And it's just very encouraging to hear that a number of the things that weren't able to happen last year are happening this year. And that's really, really cool to hear. So nice job and being so thorough, as usual. Are there questions or comments for Brendan? Well, as you know, you're welcome to stay. We always think it's some really good reason if the students leave, but you mean the world to us, Brendan. So thank you for doing what you do. And that would get us to our next order of business, which is the English Language Arts update. Dr. Goff?
Yes, present tonight are Lauren Cullerton, who's the English Department Chair, and Tammy Jarrett, a middle school English teacher. And they, along with Bill Hahn and myself, with their questions, will provide more information regarding the heterogeneous English classes at the middle school. So I will leave it to them.
Great, and welcome everybody.
I'll start the transition here. We asked Ms. Jarrett to be here to represent many of our fantastic ELA teachers at the middle school. And as everyone, I believe, knows, we had heterogeneous on non-level classes this year as a result of the pandemic and for keeping students in pods. And for different reasons, we'll continue with non-level courses next year. And we thought it would be helpful to have a teacher from the middle school speak about teaching to heterogeneous classrooms, how they ensure rigor in teaching to all students, and how they implement differentiation strategies in the classroom. So that's why Ms. Jarrett's here, and I'll turn it over to her to speak to that. And then after, we'll ask Ms. Cullerton to say a few words on how the high school prepares and plans for students as they come from the middle school, and what thoughts she has as department chair representing high school teachers as well. So Ms. Jarrett, I'll turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Well, it was a great year with our kids being in on-level classes. So I guess I can speak to and then take questions after as far as what we did in the classroom. That might be a good place to start in kind of meeting everybody's needs. So some of the programs that we use are differentiated to start with. So we have a vocabulary program that's called MEMBEAN, and it is differentiated. Kids take a test and then they're placed in the levels where they should be, and it works that way throughout the year. Then we have a couple of other programs that we use, Newsella, which you can set for Lexile, and Common Lit, which has guided reading and read aloud. So those are some of the things that we use in the class to differentiate instruction. Some other things that we tried this year, we offered book choice. So for night in particular, so we have a Holocaust unit, and we usually read Elie Wiesel's Night. So we offered 3 choices. It was The Book Thief, Night, and then The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and we kind of let the kids go with that. And they are, Book Thief would be the most difficult reading level. Night is sort of in the middle of that, and then The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is a little bit less difficult. And it was interesting to see the books that the students chose. It was a mix. I was a little bit surprised with regard to some of the students that chose the harder reading level and some of the students that chose the less difficult reading level, but we paired them off in groups, and they were able to work that way with models and helping some of the other kids that may have been struggling with the more difficult books along. So it was good for the model students because they were able to kind of demonstrate and teach some of their skill and learn at the same time while helping some of the other students that might have been struggling a little bit. Some other things that we did this year, well, that we do every year. I guess I should say the curriculum at Johnson Middle School is taught, the same curriculum is taught to, prior to this year, is taught to all classes. So there isn't a different curriculum for an on-level class than there was for an above-level class. The only difference might have been that there is a support teacher in the class that would be supporting some students in the classroom. Outside of that, maybe a little bit of a gut for that. We offered some different strategies. For instance, some of the kids may be reading if they're having a little bit of difficulty struggling with some of the content or the comprehension. Other students prefer to work with a partner, or some students might want to work independently, and that's fine. So we were encouraging them to make those choices and differentiating what they were doing in the classroom. One thing I did mention to Lauren, I had 2 8th grade classes this year. Last year, I had those same students in the 7th grade, most of them, probably 90% of the kids. And I would say of the 40 students I had, 35 of them I was recommending for an above level class in English, and 5 I was not recommending. I wanted them in a non-level class, but I will say I was very pleasantly surprised that those students that would have been recommended for a non-level class actually did really, really well and rose to the occasion of being able to keep up with the students that were very high achievers in the class. So that was something that was nice to see, and I think it built their confidence, and it was just that was a really positive that came out of this year with having on-level classes. Some other things, I just have some notes up here, that's why I keep looking up. What I'm trying to do, and I was talking to Lauren about that, over the summertime, maybe we can do some R&D on enrichment for kids, for high achieving kids in the classroom, because you have those students that are a little bit ahead and they want to just keep going, and you do want to keep them together with regard to a novel. So I want to have something that is valuable to the curriculum for them to work on, related to the curriculum, but not like, I don't want to say a punishment for them to do, like, here's extra work for you to do because you finished reading early. I want to maybe try to develop some projects or something like that can go with the units for those kids that are really moving more ahead in the classroom. What else did we do? Lots of modeling, lots of class discussion, lots of, what I do enjoy is putting the kids in a group. So they are able to work in the group because we do have Google Meets, so we can put them in breakout rooms. So just pairing up those models with the kids that maybe just need that extra kind of discussion and understand what's going on. And that seems to have worked out really well with them, as opposed to myself just standing at the front of the class and kind of just feeding them what's going on. The students that are the high achievers in the class are able to kind of do the same thing, but in a small group with my monitoring them. I just feel that not leveling English classes is going to benefit the students all around. The models will strive to help other students in the class, and the kids that are maybe not as high achievers will strive to do better. That's what I saw this year with not having level classes. That's it. And I can take any questions if anyone has any questions.
Why don't we give Ms. Colton an opportunity to say a few words and then turn over for questions at that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. I think Ms. Jarrett hit on a lot of important points. One of the perspective of coming from the high school and looking at the 9th grade students and how ready they are for the 9th grade, whether or not this leveling or unleveling will affect it, is that I really don't think it will. I think that we've always already dealt with a lot of level changes in 9th grade. The reality is a 9th grade student is very different than a middle school student. And that, when we start leveling them in grade 7, I think that students start to think of themselves in a certain level. And so maybe they think of them as an on-level student or, an above level. And I think that, they get slotted into a slot. I've always said we don't track. We don't. And students can always change levels if it's not an appropriate level. But I think that holding off on that level for a couple of years is going to give more students an opportunity, and Ms. Jarrett mentioned it earlier, to rise to the occasion. She had some students she would have put in the on level who, because they were in with their peers, ended up achieving at a higher level. And speaking with the team that came in last year, who, we initially discussed this with,
we lost you, Lauren.
One of the things Ms. Jarrett talked about was, I do think it's going to be important that we get teachers some professional development and we give them opportunity to talk to themselves. She mentioned the book circles and students picking their book levels. I think we're going to, through experience, teachers are going to learn when it's appropriate for them to put students in classes, and when it's appropriate for students to select themselves. You know, we want sometimes students to be pushed a little. We don't always want them to choose a book that their friends are choosing or that's a little bit shorter. So I think that's something that's going to come with experience with teachers and professional development. I think that those were the points I wanted to hit. So again, we can open it up to questions, and I hope I came through all the way there.
We did lose you in the middle there, Lauren, but you're back, so that's good.
Is there anything you want me to repeat? Not that I could remember what I said, but.
Why don't we open it up for questions, and we'll see what that leads us to.
Okay.
Are there questions for either Lauren or Tammy? Jen?
I have a comment, and then Jen has a question.
Okay.
Did you want to say something first, Bridget?
Thanks, Jen. No, I was just going to say that I think that, Tammy, you know, I liked what you talked about, you know, that it's the importance of teaching with high expectations, and that when you have learners who are, you know, who need that challenge or are at that higher level or advanced level, that you're going deeper with them versus just giving them the additional work. And I think that's really important. I'm glad that you mentioned that. And I also think that along with the challenge is engagement, right? You want students to be engaged at all levels, but I just wanted to, I think that's an important point as well.
Thanks, Bridget. Go ahead, Jen.
Well, I just wanted to ask, you know, part of what we do on school committee is we always look at benchmarking and seeing what neighboring communities are doing in order to determine if we can do things better. So I just wanted to hear a little bit about that and, you know, where Walpole fits into the neighboring communities.
Do you mean in terms of what neighboring communities level at the middle school? Okay.
Yes.
So we did, I actually don't have the exact number, and I apologize, but I think it was approximately between 55 and 60 schools that we actually surveyed. And the reason why I don't have the exact number is we went through all of our own job likes and some of our networks that we have. And of those 55, Walpole was one of 2 middle schools that leveled. It is not a typical practice in the middle school to level, especially in ELA. So that's a good question, and I'm glad you asked, so we could clarify that as well.
I do think that also one of the keys to success with the classes being unleveled is that we have 2 outstanding reading teachers at each of the middle schools, and I think that right now they're currently being used as part reading teachers, and they also teach a couple classes, but I think we could better service those teachers to ensure that all of our students get the support they need, so that we're not only pushing the high achieving kids, and I think that Ms. Jarrett is right. You know, some of our teachers might need some professional development and how to provide enrichment that is engaging and meaningful, and not just something to fill their time, but also to ensure that the students who need some extra support are supported in all the ways that they need.
Jen.
I really like that idea. I mean, that was my initial thought when I heard about this idea, was how can you meet the needs of all different students? And, you know, I'm a parent, not a teacher, so I come from that viewpoint, but I just would want to make sure that everybody's challenged and that, you know, the kids at the higher levels don't end up coming down to the middle, that they're really given a rigorous curriculum and allowed to really blossom. So I encourage you guys to come up with, like you're saying, this enrichment as opposed to, you know, the extra work, like you said, looking like a penalty. Anything that's creative that really can engage those students and have them take it to the next level. And then, you know, as you said, they're modeling too. So then, you know, the whole class will move up as I believe, you know, it's been explained to me. So thank you very much.
Mark.
Unmute myself. So I'm a high school teacher, as you know, and I teach a sociology class, which is seniors and juniors. And one observation I have is that you have a lot of students that find themselves once overall in the same class because it's an elective for the first time maybe in 4 or 5 years, because some kids go on and it's not tracked, but they're in effect on an honors track, and some kids are not. And it's really nice to see them come back together after a few years. So I think if you can shrink that gap between the kids, it might not seem to you as a parent if your kids are high achieving, but there are benefits to not being segregated at such an early age, I think. So thank you.
I agree with that, Mr. Breen, and I think that, students' perceptions of themselves are formed fairly early, and it's hard to break that. And if they don't perceive themselves as one of the high achieving students, it's sometimes hard to change that mindset. And so if they're all pushed together, I think that you're going to tend to have more who achieve at a higher. I don't think it's the norm that the top kids kind of come down. I think more that the middle kids will come up a little bit.
Go ahead, Mark.
Could I add, I learned something from Mr. Imbush many years ago, and he might not remember this, but when he was an assistant principal at the high school, my oldest daughter, of course, I'm a teacher, but I paid very little attention to leveling recommendations. And like many parents, I wanted her in more honors classes, and I missed the deadline. So I had to make an appointment with Mr. Imbush, and he asked a question. He said, is this your first, where is she in the birth order? Is this your first child? And so we had a brief conversation, but basically what happens is for parents, your first child, you're less aware of all of this. And it becomes the second child that you make sure that if you want to push them a little bit, that you push them maybe to take that higher level course in the subject or two. So that's a whole thing as well in terms of, oldest children. I've seen it many times since, 10 years ago with Mr. Imbush. I find I have an older child that's in a CP class, and their younger sibling, lo and behold, is in honors because parents recognize, the whole, I hate to say they learned how to play the game, but there is an element to that. So I think, again, if you can avoid segregating the kids at such an early age, it's not a bad thing.
Kristen.
And I just wanted to speak from the other end, right? Kids who need that extra support, having kids who are reading challenged, sometimes, you have a learning disability and you're reading challenged, but you're still a really good critical thinker, and being able to be in and have those really good discussions that you might not have if you're reading a book that's maybe a little bit easier. So I appreciate that from that perspective. And that you are still looking at ways to support those kids in the classroom, but also give them the opportunity to be a critical thinker and be challenged a little bit, and to have those discussions with a wider variety of students. So I appreciate it from that perspective as well.
I think I would just like to, I'm sorry, Tammy, go ahead first.
No, that's okay. I was actually going to say that before Kristen spoke, that I have seen some students that would, if they were in an odd-level classroom, the discussion wouldn't be as rich, that have actually really contributed a lot to the discussion. And that was nice to see them do that and feel comfortable doing it. Was nice as well.
All very good points. I think I want to take it from the other angle, though. There are definitely going to be a set of people who are skeptical about this. And I think part of it is because, going off of what Mark Breen said, if you have an older child who has gone to the high school, I think people know that there's a huge jump from middle school to high school in terms of expectations. And I think that that's something that really needs to get thought about now, because if we're trying to get more kids to higher places, we really have to increase expectations for kids to be able to succeed. To me, I think it's going to be important to measure success. And I don't know if you've thought yet about what success would look like, but I think that the English department at the high school is highly regarded, and that one thing that I would look at is to have more students in honors levels classes because of the way they've been prepared during the middle school. To me, that would be a success, but I'm wondering about those two things. I don't think it's a perception, I think it's a reality that there's a jump for students going from middle school to high school. And I'm interested in how you will measure success of a change like this, because I think that you'll find that you'll be able to convince people. And that this is not the only way, but I'm just interested in your answers to those two thoughts.
I think, Nancy, that in my time as department head in Walpole, I think it's like 14 years, I don't know. We've seen a shift, you know, the attitude about the honors 14 years ago, the attitude about the honors classes was that it was an exclusive place and we had to kind of protect it and we had to kind of keep it exclusive. And we had a lot of teachers spending a lot of time of, you know, weeding students out, you know, who didn't really belong there. And we have shifted that philosophy. That is not the philosophy, nor has it been in probably the last 8 to 10 years. I think our philosophy is now, if a student wants to be in the honors, wants to put in the time and the effort, because I think that the two things that a student needs to be able to do to be successful in the honors is they need to be able to work independently, and they need to be able to keep up with the workload. And that's a different conversation. Sometimes I think the workload is too much. I think our honors students do an awful lot of work. But regardless, to be successful, I think that our students need to be willing to put in the time and need to also be be able to work independently, that those are really the two factors. And more and more of our students are taking honors in English than ever have before. 10 years ago, we had 2 sections of honors at every year. We have burgeoned up to 3 or 4 at most years. We've added more AP students. We now have 3 to 4 AP language classes, and we have 2 AP Lit classes. So we really do have more and more kids being successful at that level. At that same time, the number of students in the freshman honors has shrunk. We only currently, for the past couple of years, have had 2 sections of freshman honors. And I'm not really sure why that is, but my thinking is that if we have those classes unleveled, that those numbers might actually go up, more kids in the freshman honors class. As it is, we've only had 2 sections of the honors, but a lot of kids very successful in the CP1 class. Our freshman CP1, we've heard the cry that there's a big gap between the honors and the CP1, and I think we have closed that, especially in the freshman year. Closed that to the point that a lot of our students move from freshman CP1 to sophomore honors, even with the dreaded, scary Mr. Allen, and find success. And I think that's because we have different expectations for those CP1 kids. And so I think that if they're meeting those expectations in the freshman year, they can do the same thing in the middle school without already and my fear is that when we already put them in the above in 7 and 8, that some of those other kids don't think that they can do it. And yet they do, and they're very successful. You know, by the time we have seniors graduate, this year we have 2 sections of AP Lit, 2 sections of AP Lang, and 1 senior honors. That's 5 sections of kids who are in honors or above, where we only started with 2. So I think that, you know, a lot more kids can be successful. Some of it is a readiness, a maturity that they don't necessarily have in middle school. But I think if we give more of those kids the foundation and the support and encouragement, we'll find more of them being successful. I don't know how we're going to measure that other than looking at enrollment numbers of how many are in the honors class and, start there and end there.
Well, it's a good starting place. And, I think that it sort of points to the fact that you have been looking at ways to challenge students to get to higher places for a while now. And as Bill Hahn mentioned, it certainly took some, it lines up with what many other successful districts are doing. So, those are all things that that maybe that are important for us to know so that we can help the community to understand, because you can also understand at the very initial the initial time that somebody hears about this, they might feel that we're losing something as opposed to gaining something. So those are helpful things. Mark, it looked like you had something you wanted to say.
Well, I just wanted to add, like, in my experience at King Philip, years ago, we had, for the freshmen, it was roughly 60-40, about 40% in the honors and maybe less than 40%, and then the rest in CP. These days, the freshmen come in, and again, it's both English and history. It's probably about 65 or 70% of the kids are in honors classes. And for a few years there was a concern that, we're flooding the honors classes and honors isn't honors anymore. I don't think it's hurt the kids I don't think it's hurt the high achieving kids at all. And those middle achieving kids that are in an honors class, they're in a better environment. So I used to be a little bit skeptical of that. I'm not anymore. So I encourage that.
Sean.
Thank you. And thank you. I really appreciate to hear the reflectiveness of the presentation, thinking about how this year's gone and making changes for next year. That's fantastic. As a parent of an 8th grader, this year's English class has been fantastic. It's been great to hear what's going on and the choice that's available, but also the rigor and the challenge of the assignments for all students has been great. And I just want to kind of piggyback off one of the things that Nancy said about how to figure out if the plan is working. And I was wondering if there's some sort of common assessment that happens maybe a couple times throughout the 9th grade year, or whether there is some sort of benchmarking or something that goes on to kind of just generally see how the students are progressing using the data that's available, tracking from middle school up to high school, something that would follow the students, that would inform their growth or maybe lack of growth if they've been placed in the wrong spot.
Sean, what we do is we don't have a traditional common assessment, but we do share common grading practices, and our PLC teachers meet regularly and talk about what we're teaching and writing. The reality is we don't necessarily all teach the same book at the same time. We just don't have enough resources, but we're teaching the same skills. And so we do a lot of common grading practice. You might have written a paper on X and the student might have written a paper on whatever, but we look at them together and we look to see that our students are achieving writing at similar paces. I would say that the writing is really the main assessment that we look at, because the vocabulary acquisition and the grammar can all be assessed through the writing. So we don't have we don't do like an MCAS kind of, that everybody does, but our teachers do meet throughout the year in their PLC groups where they hold each other accountable and hold their students and make sure they're all sort of on track.
Thank you. That is encouraging to hear. Thank you.
Great. I think we might be winding up with questions. Are there more? This has been very helpful because like I said, it gets you beyond that initial, like, ooh, I don't know if I like this feeling. So we appreciate you both being here tonight, and look forward to seeing you one of these days in the future.
Maybe at a BC football game.
There you go, Lauren. Now we go. Okay. Thank you, and I think we're going to go on to the next item, and as we expect, the students might want to leave. You're free to go. Thank you, though.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is a report on bullying data and just a general update from the sort of school discipline report. Bridget?
And that's Mr. Hines going to provide you an update with the bullying report. Yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna share my screen. All right. So we made a commitment several years ago to be transparent and clear with our bullying reporting through our bullying prevention intervention plan. So I'm happy to be here tonight to share some information and keep everyone updated. Whenever we talk about bullying prevention and intervention, I like to start with the definition of bullying. It's something that we always need to take advantage of opportunities to clearly define. What you see here is the legal definition. And what I typically do to summarize to parents is that when we're looking to see if something is bullying, we first look at what might seem obvious, a form of harassment that causes harm or hostility or a hostile environment. We look for repetition over time, something that happens more than once, and we look for a power indifference. And I share that because like I said in the beginning, I think it's really important for people to understand a word that oftentimes is used to define a lot of different things, for us to be clear about how schools define bullying and what we look for when we use that term and we define something as bullying. And I think that'll be helpful for the rest of this brief presentation that people keep in mind as we move forward. A quick review of the Walpole Public Schools Bullying Prevention Intervention Plan. It was developed in consultation with many different stakeholders that you can see listed here. It's revised primarily yearly by the Walpole Public Schools Leadership Council, the Walpole Public Schools, or actually Walpole's Wellness Committee, and our school councils as well. It is posted on a number of different places on our district and school website. I listed and linked one here. This one's under the parent portal, but it can be found under the student portal and under some other access points. We try to have several different access points. Not only does that include the website, but those links also include opportunity for students to report, or students, parents, or community members to report bullying anonymously through our bullying report. And I did want to note, just because it's timely, that we recently completed part of our tiered focus monitoring process that's done through the Department of Education and Secondary Education, and our bullying prevention intervention plan was reviewed and approved through that process. All right, so let's talk about this year. We all know that this was not a traditional year, so overall the numbers were much lower in terms of bullying intervention, in terms of bullying reports and allegations. I think that could be as a result of a number of things, but I think one big piece of that is our students were not in school as much. So I think that that's normal and pretty typical around the state that the allegations and reports were down. So we had 18 reports or allegations. You can see the numbers broken down of who was making these reports and who are making these allegations. Please keep in mind, while this number does equal 18, it should be noted that some of these were reported, by a staff member through a student. Some were reported by parents in collaboration with a staff member. Currently, there are no confirmed cases of bullying, but I should note that there are some cases that are still pending. All 18 allegations resulted in contact to parents, and this is really important to note, that if something's not found to be bullying, it does not mean that we do not take the allegations very, very seriously and work and communicate with parents and guardians. 10 allegations resulted in school safety plans. So even if something's not bullying, that does not mean that we don't create a safety plan to ensure the safety of all people involved. And then we are always collaborating, working closely with our school resource officers and, when appropriate, the Walpole Police Department. Moving forward, some things that we're considering that are new or that are typical practices that we make sure that we emphasize. One, a continued commitment to social emotional learning practices and professional development that support safe and supportive schools is really important. And the fact that that's a big part of our strategic plan demonstrates our commitment to bullying. Bullying cannot just be a response to an allegation. It needs to be, dealing with bullying cannot just be a response to a single allegation. It needs to be part of everything that we do in our school cultures. We will continue to maintain and update the bullying prevention and investigation plan. We ensure that the plan and reporting methods are communicated to all staff, students, families, and relevant stakeholders. If you were not aware, we provide a pretty extensive, almost full day bullying, cyberbullying training from the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center at all of our new staff orientation. So every single one of our new staff that are brought on are given an extensive training for bullying and cyberbullying. We also ensure that all of our staff each year take part in a refreshing training, and then also that we will continue to record all allegations, and maintain the transparent reporting practices and procedure. So that is my brief summary and update on our bullying prevention intervention plan, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments at this time. And if you could hear my dog barking in the background, I'm sorry, I have no control over that.
Carrie. Oh, I'm sorry, let's have Bridget go first, and then you, Carrie.
Sorry, Carrie. I just want to thank Bill for that. I think also it's also important to note too that just because there's no finding of bullying doesn't mean that there could be a finding of something else. There's a whole list of things that we have to report. It might be a threat, right? It may be a fight. It could be assault. There's a litany. So just because it's a no finding of bullying, it may end up going into another category. And the Education Collaborative, which we know as TEC, actually partnered with Dr. Nancy Rappaport about 1.5 years ago to offer a year-long training opportunity that was really designed to build capacity and bring teams together to participate what was known as a safety assessment, a threat safety assessment workshop. And our group, our administrators, along with Officer Hart, participated in this year-long training. And we spent that year creating a threat safety assessment protocol to really ensure the timeliness of the response. So it ensures this systematic procedure of not only the assessment, but the individuals to be able to help students and respond and communicate to a variety of threat situations that might arise in school. So it's really a proactive versus a reactive response. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Okay, Carrie.
Thank you for that report, Mr. Hahn. I think you're right that numbers are probably down across the board this year, and that sort of affirms what we already know about bullying behaviors, which is they're very likely to occur in unstructured settings, and a lot of those have been eliminated this year. Passing time in the hallway, the cafeteria, things where it's not as easy for adults to observe, and things that make it difficult sometimes to track those behaviors. And I also think, and maybe this is optimistic of me, but students who had to spend most of the day, I'm thinking middle school specifically, like students who had to spend most of the day with one core group of students who they may or may not have known very well or may not have been friends with, and were forced to cultivate relationships with those people. My hope is that can build some bridges socially among students who might not have thought that they could get along or interact positively with each other. But I do think that something that's going to be important to remember next year, just by virtue of the circumstances this year, kids lost a lot of opportunities to socialize, meaning they lost a lot of opportunities to have positive social interactions, and they also lost the learning opportunities that come with having peer conflict or perhaps making a mistake in a peer interaction. So I wouldn't be surprised to see these numbers rise next year as our students have to readjust to being back in the, the typical school environment and interact with many, many more students and sort of re-hone and refocus their social skills. Because I think a lot of us felt a little rusty even as adults coming out of quarantine, and for kids whose social development is still very much ongoing, those challenges are even greater. So I know that this team puts a lot of emphasis on social emotional learning, and I know that our teachers do. It's just something I think we're going to have to be really, really mindful of next year when all the students are back together in normal circumstances.
Good point, Carrie. Are there other questions or comments for Bill or Bridget? Sean.
Thank you for the presentation, and just kind of echoing what Carrie said. I think it's been great. How thorough and how much emphasis is put on the development of the staff and the administration to support students in this area. It's great to see, and I'd be curious if year-over-year numbers of incidents and responses are kept, going forward, just what that kind of looks like. Because last year, while we did have part of a year that was normal, there was certainly part of it that was, far different than even this year was. So even comparing those 2 years, could be helpful. But I don't want to, not celebrate some of the work that has been done and, say that numbers are down because of, COVID and a different school year. I think there have been practices that have been put in place across the district to support teachers and students and give them resources and give them a voice that when something does happen, that they can speak up and that they'll be heard. So I want to make sure that is pointed out too. You guys were very humble in your presentation, but I think there's some positive work that has been done to support this.
I guess I would just ask to I'd like to know a little bit about what comes after bullying prevention. Like, in other words, I think that what we are getting to and want to get to is a climate of respect in our schools. And and I know that work is being done in that area. Do you feel like you have the right level of resources to not just do bullying prevention, but to do creating a positive climate so that our schools are the kind of place that we want them to be for all students?
Yeah, and I think that's why I tried to, when talking about moving forward, that one of the most important things we can do that is highlighted or a huge part of our strategic plan is the commitment to social emotional learning. And unfortunately, like many things in education, when they become an acronym, they become a cliche. But if we could really put aside the fact that SEL has just become an overused acronym or said time and time again, what that really means, Nancy, is what you just asked about. That's creating a culture of respect, care, and concern where all students and staff members are free to be truly who they are. And as reflected in Carrie's comment, we know that in many ways, because of really reasonable cognitive reasons, that toughest time is middle school. But what we see is the implementation of responsive classroom at the elementary school that is working, that is done almost with fidelity across the board. And we have really committed a great deal of support and PD to our middle school staff to be more proactive, not just in terms of bullying prevention, but really creating climates in classrooms and cultures that are strong, positive, and where students are free to be truly who they are. And I think actually we're seeing that reflected successfully in the high school, where we're seeing major reductions in allegations and bullying, and that was even actually before this year. No time to celebrate. We have work to do at all levels. But that's why I put that bullet point around SEL first, because that attention, that focus, and the support we're needed is really where we can continue to grow and make strides.
And I think just to add that, as Bill mentioned, it's being strategic. We have to think strategically, and then also looking at our budget. Our budget always ties back to our strategic plan, right? And, those positions that we had asked for last year that we weren't able to get, obviously, due to COVID, we were able to get that this year. So that's adding, the counselors. So we have the counselors at the elementary levels to continue their work and growth. We've got the wellness, at the high school. We've got, obviously, the coach in order to help, transition students in and to help with that, social emotional piece. So that will continue our work.
I guess I would just also add, and then I'll get to the other people, that hopefully we're going to have a success in the fall, and we'll be able to be planning for combining middle school students into one building. And so much of this does lie in the middle school. It's just the place where kids have to figure out how to be the young adults that they want to be. And I just want us to make sure that we are deliberate in terms of taking the time to plan the climate of a school that we're very much hoping for in a thoughtful way, because part of it is if you can develop that level of everybody respects each other and it feels like a safe, supportive place, all of a sudden you see education happening in a much better way because students aren't as nervous or as uncomfortable or whatever. So just a thought for the next couple of years. Hopefully we'll be able to, to plan and to use some of our time to plan on this level. Jen, you were going to say something though.
Yeah, so from the elementary perspective, I just wanted to say, obviously recess looked so different this year. The students weren't really able to play with each other in ways that they used to in the past. So I know, we spoke about training recess aides years ago. And I just want to hear a little bit more about what's going to be put in place to address just the fact that these kids had a year where they weren't able to really, be that close to other students. And all of a sudden next year it's going to be very different. So I imagine that we're going to put some extra training in place to deal with that.
We, as you might recall, we trained our recess aides with our extended day program, and so we'll continue with that model. And we know that got a lot of positive reporting back to us. I think, I think training the adults to ensure they can create a great, safe environment for students to play and interact is really, really important. I also just think giving students an opportunity to play and interact is going to be really, really important. That is where we know empirically that is where the learning happens, and the adults that can be there to support for that to happen in a safe way where everyone grows and learns is crucial. And that's how our training is modeled, that we're creating safe structures where students can interact and play. And as everyone's noted, it has not looked like that for over a year. And I think we're all excited to get back to that more traditional model, because we're all healthier, we're all more successful, and certainly our students are as well.
Are there any other questions? Great, and thank you for the commitment to, staying regular in terms of reporting on the topic, and we will keep that going. So that gets us to our next item, which is the yearly evaluation of our superintendent, Dr. Goff. And as crazy as it seems, we do this publicly right here on TV with everybody here. And we just want to start by saying how grateful we are for everything that our staff, from one end to the other has done for us during this year. It's been a crazy year, and we as a committee just want to extend our gratitude to every single staff member, and in particular want to talk about our superintendent this evening. So one of the things we talked about was that because it's a COVID year, there were just so many unusual things that weren't even mentioned in a traditional evaluation. But we wanted to talk about the fact that for many people who live and work outside of a school environment, it's almost impossible to see what it takes to operate a school system the size of ours for the last 14 months or so. Given the extraordinary circumstances, we want to begin by addressing the very many things that were uniquely thrust upon the school administrators, and we think that through Dr. Goff's leadership, we were able to defy the odds in many ways. Last summer was a summer without a break for any of them. The administrators worked through the entire summer to develop and redevelop student-centered plans to allow students to attend school in their preferred choice of full remote, hybrid, and when possible, full in-person learning. Last spring, Dr. Goff and her team made sure that every Walpole student who needed a device in order to participate in school received a Chromebook, and in a safe and responsible way. The thoroughness of this work allowed our students to find a path to success. Dr. Goff led an open and collaborative process of clear communication and responsible decision-making with all of the Walpole Public School employees, but most clearly through our union connections. She was equally communicative with the Walpole Health Department, the police, fire departments, and also with town administration. She communicated tirelessly and empathetically with parents and family members, as many of them struggled with the decisions at each stage of development. Dr. Goff was able to proactively troubleshoot many of the necessary details to operate in a COVID environment, and she made additional time and training available to all the Walpole Public School staff members as they made tremendous adaptations on multiple occasions. Our school doors opened to students, including all kindergartners, on Monday, September 14th, which was earlier than just about every district in this area, and our schools remained open all year. Initially, the schools operated in a hybrid model, but special attention and additional attention was given to students with extraordinary needs. By September, the decision was made to offer full-time in-person learning to students in grades 1, and by sometime in January, grades 2 students were offered the chance to attend full-time. Lastly, as a district, on April 5th, Walpole Public Schools pivoted again and welcomed all students back, all grades, back into our buildings again, long before the middle school and high school requirement that the state required. As a committee, we believe that the success of the Walpole Public Schools this year is a direct result of Dr. Goff's very focused, proactive, and cooperative leadership. Her energy became contagious. Many complicated decisions needed to be made and communicated, and more often than not, she needed to engage in difficult conversations with people coming from often competing perspectives. There were moments where it appeared that she thrived in that environment because she regularly found a way to interject some well-placed humor in tense moments. Out of necessity, her leadership and operational skills developed on an express curve this year. So that is sort of the introduction to a more typical evaluation. And just so the listening public knows, all 7 of us contribute, and we put all the results together to form this document that we're working on right now. I guess I want to stop right here and just see if there are any committee members that want to comment specifically on the COVID year, and then I'll move into the more typical part. Okay, Bill and then Jen.
Madam Chair. I love analogies. So the good doctor was flying a plane while building the engine to that plane, and that plane was on fire, and that plane did not have landing gear, and the landing strips allocated to that plane were kept being changed and closed by the Commonwealth. I think that sums up what we just heard from Chair Gallivan. And I think despite all of that, what came through in what we were given from Dr. Goff was the fact that the regular work continued despite all of the COVID considerations. And I just have never, I've been on the school committee for 9 years, over the last 12. I've never seen any human work this hard for our kids, for our district in my life. And not only work this hard, but I think the requirements to move from reopening to achievement to parental communication, every single, and I think many of us may have experienced this in a lesser degree in our own personal and professional lives, but just the necessity to juggle, to be concurrently working on radically different projects towards the goal of reopening was something that struck me. And I know we'll dig deeper into the evaluation as a whole, which I believe what she accomplished this year was remarkable. But I also kind of want to point out, when we think about this being a COVID year, many districts, just in looking at a few area ones, just had a goal of opening the place up, keeping the lights on. And I think when we I think there were such great strides given, even if it was a normal year, and the COVID lens only magnifies the level of work and the level of achievement that Dr. Goff has been able to undertake this year. And I don't know how she sleeps, and I think that it can't be underscored enough, the multifaceted nature of this year, and how just the human toll of it on the chief executive of the school department in particular, which is truly amazing.
Thank you, Bill. Jen, you want to try to follow that?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure my analogies are going to be quite as eloquent, and I'm not talking about airplanes and such, but Bridget, honestly, in this year, I would listen to what you guys were going through, and honestly, I felt like panic just hearing, just with the changing guidelines. The state did not do you guys any favors. Switching midsummer, we were preparing to go back, and then all of a sudden it's like, just let's shift gears completely. And you were just so calming with the way you handled it, led the district through such a tumultuous time. And I mean, this is just, in our lifetime, hopefully we'll never have anything like this again. And we're just so grateful to have such a strong leader, to just have a calming presence, and, to pull us through this the way you did. So I just, I can't thank you enough for your communication with parents and just setting the tone and calming everybody through this. And I think that, if you hadn't had to deal with all of this, in my view, there would have been other areas that you could have dedicated a little bit more time to. And I think, the state didn't enable you to, and you got our kids back earlier than the state dictated. You had the kindergartners going, you were looking at classrooms all the time, and how can I get this grade in? Can I find another room? And just so many moving parts, and your creativity and leadership. Just, I commend you, and thank you so much for taking us through this very, very difficult time.
Great. And one of the kindest things we could do is to not drag this out for an hour, because it's got to be awkward. So I'm going to move on to the main part, and everybody should feel free to jump in and interrupt me if you need to. But as you would expect, we set goals collectively, and Dr. Goff wanted to be extensive in her goals. There was a student learning goal, which was that during the pandemic, she wanted to foster student engagement, curriculum coverage, and academic growth of all students in new learning environments where students learn in person, hybrid, and remotely. There were two professional practice goals, one being to provide the necessary leadership to support and successfully navigate the challenges during COVID, and the second one in a more broad way to develop the strategy development skills, data analysis, and instructional leadership by completing the second year of the new student induction program. There were two district improvement goals, one being to continue to collaborate with municipal officials and engage all community stakeholders to ensure the future educational facilities. That was largely about the middle school project that is being developed, but it was also about things like budget development, capital budget, and the needs of all of the schools. And then the last district improvement goal was related to the desire to improve cultural proficiency and cultural competency across the district by furthering the work of anti-racist, inequity, and exclusionary practices. Beyond that, Dr. Goff was also rated in her instructional leadership, her management and operational skills, her family and community engagement, and professional culture. I'd like to just highlight some of the comments. When it came to instructional leadership, the rules completely changed this year due to the extreme circumstances, and Dr. Goff adapted extremely well. The focus on instructional leadership became the need to provide all of the necessary support so that the teachers, with the support of administrators and colleagues, could operate very differently. No one should use the standard of high quality education necessarily for the current year, but given that, Dr. Goff's instructional leadership was supportive, practical, and always child-centered. The challenges continued to amass as the year developed, and the learning environments inevitably had to change and react to things that were working well and things that were not working well, and the overall ability to keep our staff motivated and supported through extremely challenging times. We were particularly pleased to know that Dr. Goff maintained a strong presence in the buildings throughout the year. We also think that we have some very large challenges ahead in the field of post-COVID education, and think that the proper foundation was created instructionally during this year in Walpole. When it came to management and operations, we pretty much summarized it by saying Dr. Goff thrived during this school year as a responsive leader that put in place and supported plans, policies, and procedures that let students and staff thrive as much as possible throughout the pandemic. The social and emotional health of students and staff were paramount, being regularly referenced in communications and school committee meetings. This is evident in the collaborative relationship the district administration has with the teachers union. Resources have also been regularly dispersed to families to support conversations with their students. Another highlight in this area is the budget development process, which was extremely collaborative and communicated thoroughly to stakeholders and the community. Throughout the pandemic and its uncertainty, it seemed that one of the things that could be counted on was a thorough understanding of where the district stood financially and what needed to be done in order to meet the needs of students and staff. Hard decisions were made openly and honestly. Going forward, it's important that the district level and building level staff that are hired and the current staff are organized in a way that supports Dr. Goff and fills in the gaps that currently require her to work extra hard and extra long hours. We had a lot to say about communication. Communication is really Dr. Goff's strength, although she has so many. Her strong communication style was a calming influence this year. She led us through an extremely challenging time, and her communication with parents was frequent and thoughtful. With all of the uncertainty and disappointment from parents on either side of the back-to-school debate, she continued to communicate via school committee meetings, regular newsletters, and lots of individual emails and phone calls. She also used various surveys to make sure that parent input was solicited, which was especially important this year. It was great to hear that Dr. Goff circulated in the school community, making sure to stay in touch with her administration and teachers in this challenging environment. Let me call them is perhaps the phrase which most succinctly sums up Dr. Goff's communication style within the Walpole Public Schools. Yes, her superintendent emails have been strong and well crafted, but it is her personal one-on-one communication where her excellence is truly apparent. Many times we hear from parents or community members that after a heated, hastily written email, Dr. Goff would call them. She refuses to let matters or community concerns fester, and she's hardwired with a desire to immediately begin a dialogue, understand the person, engage with them, and really hear them. She's not just de-escalating problems, she embodies the empathetic values of our district in her daily communication. But during this challenging year, she calmed the community by putting an unprecedented level of work. Yet we would not call her a pacifier. She's had very hard conversations often. And the good news is the people who met with her feel heard, seen, and most importantly, respected. And I could go on, but I'm not, for your sake. Two more pieces. We talked about professional culture. We feel that Dr. Goff's work ethic is a perfect match with the demeanor and expectations of the Walpole school community. She set extremely high standards for herself and works tirelessly to achieve, if not exceed them. These expectations carry on to most of the other district administrators and building leaders in Walpole. Dr. Goff modeled and led the district's pursuit of increased cultural provision through the workshops of workshops for building and district leaders, as well as the creation of a robust strategic plan goal with well thought out objectives. Consensus seems to resonate throughout the district employees and be increasing amongst students and families. Dr. Goff recognized early on that her regular communication with everyone could create trust and collaboration at a time when it was desperately needed. After establishing that trust, she regularly needed to go back and evaluate how plans were succeeding or not, how new circumstances would affect decisions, and what supports were needed for the long term. We commend her ability to communicate clearly and effectively, along with her ability to manage conflict, and list them among her biggest strengths this year. We believe that she's committed to high standards, cultural proficiency, continuous learning, and a shared vision. We look forward to seeing her work in these areas when she has the time to really attend to them, and we attribute many of the successes of the 2021 school year to the very strong leadership of Dr. Goff. And I have one more, just sort of general summary. There's a saying that in any organization, the tone is set at the top. The Walpole Public Schools have greatly benefited by the tone set by Dr. Goff over the past year, one of dedication, collaboration, and determination. The success of our district in navigating the complexities of public education in the global pandemic has been unparalleled, thanks to Dr. Goff's effective leadership. Her thoughtful decision-making and respectful dialogue with stakeholders made this seeming impossible year a successful one for administrators, staff, students, and families. The confidence and professionalism she displayed over the past year have belied the fact that she is just in her second year of tenure as a superintendent. As with any district superintendent, opportunities for growth remain. Nevertheless, at a time when Dr. Goff had every excuse for simply trying to maintain the status quo, her districts have helped propel our district forward, and we're tremendously grateful. And with that, I will open it up again for any other comments that committee members want to make. This is a thorough process. I'm just trying to give a general overview of it. And we see an awful lot of strength here, and we want to express our gratitude. And with that, I'll open it up. Okay, Sean.
One thing I just wanted to say is that presence matters. You know, I've seen personally Dr. Goff at the drive-up circle, at drop-off and pickup duty. I've seen her in pictures on Twitter from my kids' classes, you know, not standing in the background, but, you know, actively engaging as best as she could. And those are things that are not common. And I think speaks to Dr. Goff as not being a common superintendent. You know, she is uncommon, but super well suited to, you know, meet the needs of the district, to be personal with our students and our staff and our families, really going above and beyond to make those connections that are going to build a strong future for everybody.
Well said. And I know that, you know, I think that in general, people try not to repeat each other. So I know this is a 7-person message that hopefully is something that, as sort of awkward as and embarrassing as being evaluated in public must be, I hope you're receiving the strong message that we think very highly, very, very highly of the work you've done this year, Dr. Goff.
I don't think anything is awkward and unusual this year.
Touché.
But no, it is. It's really been a difficult year, I think, for all of us. You know, for you know, everybody. You know, families and our staff, school committee, and, you know, obviously professionally, for me, you know, due to COVID, and then also personally, like you all know, with the recent loss of my father, that, you know, I didn't get to spend the time that you always think you have more time, and or have fully time to grieve his loss, you know. But it's the nature of the job, you know. It is the nature of the job. So I promised to reintroduce myself as wife, mother, and daughter in a few weeks. And fortunately, you know, for me, I had Bill Hahn and Mike Frisha and Dr. Quealy, so they kind of took the place this year. And you know, I've always said this, it's a good thing we get along, because it would have been a really long year. But, you know, we don't always agree. You know, we process, we reflect, we debate. You know, we go into our offices, we come back out, we debate again. And I think that allows for growth, that we all have, you know, our strengths and our different personalities. And I think that's what makes us work really well together. But as many of you that know me, you know, there's little time for rest. You know, as an instructional leader, it's important that we're looking for ways to improve. You know, as reports and assessments come in, we need to take time to analyze and disaggregate data. I'm a data geek, and look at what challenges are. And it's important that we hold high academic standards and high expectations for our students. We need to take, I take this evaluation very seriously, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think of ways to improve, and it will not stop, you know, my drive to do better. You know, we can always do better, and we can always be better. But, you know, I'm fortunate to have the school committee and our principals, our central office, our educators and students, and the families who continue to work together to do what's in the best interest of our students. And I really thank everybody for their dedication and support. And I look forward to our continued work together next time.
Thank you. Very, very well said. And with that, I think we'll move on to the next item, which is your report, Dr. Gall.
Sure. Before I get into the change in COVID guidelines, because we do have a change that's going to be effective tomorrow, and another piece of news, I just wanted to start by letting Mr. Imbush, who's the principal at Walpole High School, provide some context and clarity around high school graduation. So I'll give him the floor before I go into COVID.
Perfect. That's great. Welcome, Steve.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Specifically, I wanted to, just start out by discussing the change that we actually made 2 years ago after receiving an increasing number of requests from a variety of groups asking to wear stoles or cords at the graduation ceremony. School leadership and senior class advisors began a lengthy dialogue to decide whether to allow every group to wear what they wanted or to maintain some consistency and style with our caps and gowns. Such requests were received from foreign language honor societies, the STEM Academy, Metco, Speech and Debate, the Student Council, to name but a few. We also had requests from outside groups such as Eagle Scouts, Girl Scout Gold Award recipients, students entering the military after graduation. At that time, the decision was made to maintain some uniformity since the primary goal of the ceremony was to award a diploma to every member of the class. Although every child follows their own unique path through 12 years of schooling, the graduation ceremony aims to recognize the class as a whole. We understand that some members of the community are upset by that decision. The decision was not made to diminish the academic accomplishments of our students in any way. On the contrary, during the graduation ceremony, we recognize many students who are the recipients of almost 40 different scholarships, along with another dozen academic department awards. We also recognize up to 60 students who receive scholarships through the Walpole Scholarship Foundation. We recognize those students who are entering the military by calling them by name and thanking them for their service. This year, we plan to recognize all the members of the National Honor Society in the same manner by describing what it means to be a member of NHS and acknowledging each individual student by name. Additionally, the top 2 students from the class will be honored and recognized as well. Our underclassmen are recognized every year for their outstanding academic achievements during our Underclassmen Awards ceremony, where gold and silver awards as well as college book awards are bestowed on our students. We also recognize our NHS students each spring during our outstanding National Honor Society induction ceremony. I want to apologize to the community for the lack of communication on this decision. It was decided 2 years ago, and last year the graduation ceremony was a drive-through ceremony due to the pandemic, so little attention was paid to this detail. I take full responsibility for any perceived lack of transparency. We look forward to having a wonderful commencement ceremony on June 6th out on Turco Field. I'm hopeful that we can come together as a community to celebrate the class of 2021.
Thanks, Stephen. Do you want me to continue, Nancy?
Let me just see. Are there any questions that people have for Mr. Embush? Steve, can you? I just have one sort of general one. Can you give us a sense of what kind of limitations there are going to be on graduation? Like, I know that often the entire school committee, for example, is encouraged or invited at least to attend. Are you limiting the number of people? What are the rules?
So there are guidelines that have come out from the Department of Education. Actually, they updated their guidelines. At one point, students had to be 6 feet apart on the field, and that has changed. Now they can be 3 feet apart. They can have. We are allowing up to 4 guests per graduate based on the size of our field and the area that we can keep people. The DESE will allow up to 6, and so we are also making some extra tickets available for those students whose families are a little bigger than 4. This year, we are we are told that attendance must be limited to faculty, administration, speakers, and graduates and their families. So we have unfortunately limited other guests. For example, in the past, as you know, we would have people who will come to present a scholarship, for example. And so we unfortunately have had to limit that procedure going on. But what we're actually changing how we're going to structure it. The graduates are actually going to be on the bleachers this year. And the whole field is going to be open to the families. We are going to have chairs, although families are welcome to bring their own chairs, and sit in family pods. The guidelines are that they have to, stay 6 feet away from another family pod, but there is plenty of room on the field. We would not have been able to do that had we run graduation the same way that we did with the students on the field and the families on the bleachers. There wouldn't have been enough room. So we figured we'd try it this way. I think it's going to look good. I'm looking forward to seeing how it comes together. And you as school committee members are absolutely invited along to, we will have available seating for you. I am looking forward to a good day. It will be followed by a car parade. That will happen, and about a half hour after the ceremony ends, to give people a chance to go home and get out onto the parade route. The one thing that we are hoping it will be is not raining, because we cannot go inside this year. If we do go inside, we'll have to do it in stages with only students, and we just don't want to do that. So the rain date is actually going to be Saturday the 5th. We're hoping that we can tell ahead of time, like on the Friday morning, if it's really going to be a tornado on Sunday, that we'll shift it back to Saturday. But we've been successful in the past in keeping the rain away, so I think we can manage it.
For people that haven't seen him, Stephen Bush can do a pretty quick graduation when the clouds start coming in. So yeah, I'm counting on that. A couple of other questions. I'm glad to hear the car parade. That's exciting. That's another good collaboration effort, because I know it involves the police. It probably involves the DPW, and so thanks to everybody who worked on that. Are you able? Is it going to be live streamed? And Is it going to be music? I'm just curious.
Yes, we can have the band out there. Each band member has to be 10 feet apart from every other band member. But with technology and microphones, we're hoping we can make that all happen. We will have the national anthem sung by the students again in the same way. Very nice. So that will happen. And sorry, you had another question prior to the band.
So, will it be live streamed?
Oh yes, it will be live streamed as we normally do. So we'll get those links out to people ahead of time as well, for those who can't make it to the ceremony. The other part of, I should just mention that every student is being given tickets. We will be giving out those tickets to the students in a couple of weeks. For the family members, because on the back of each ticket is a QR code, and every person who is coming into the graduation ceremony has to click on that QR code and do an attestation that they are feeling well and don't have any COVID symptoms. So that is a requirement of the state as well, that we do that. So there are some restrictions and protocols that we have to follow, but I really am hopeful that we can have a really, really nice day for the class of 21.
That's great. That's a lot of progress. So thank you, and thank you for being here to share that news with us and the community.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Jen.
I just wanted to say, based on feedback that I'm getting, I mean, I know you have an incredibly difficult position, and no matter what you do, parents are not going to be happy. You know, you can't please everyone basically, but in a community where we celebrate diversity in so many different ways, I personally would like to see us recognize students academically. And, you know, it doesn't really sit well with me, the way this, you know, the comments I'm reading on comments people are sending to me. So, you know, I just would encourage you to get some more feedback on this and listen to what the community is saying in terms of making a decision going forward. I understand it may be too late this year, but, you know, community input is important. And you have done an amazing job, all of you administrators, this year in a tough year. And you can't get everything right. So I just wanted to say, I hope you listen to some community input on this, and thank you for all you do.
Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, Steve, I'm really excited for June the 6th. I think it'll probably be my 13th time on Turco Field, counting my school committee time, my own, and my brother's. And I think Nancy's, Chair Gallivan is correct. We do run a very good, efficient ceremony for our students. And I wanted to, and I'm excited about the parade as well. I think the parade is something, as we joked last year, is probably going to be with us forever. And it's probably a good thing that it's with us forever. And I think that is a new tradition that we've added as a community. And so I had a conversation with you one-on-one about a week ago, and I too don't particularly agree with you about the stoles. And I just like to compartmentalize that. One thing that's really bothered me in the dialogue is when we talk about the recognition of veterans. And I was talking to my dad, who is a Vietnam veteran. And I said, you know, Dad, you sat through 3 of these. Do you remember? Because I don't, in 2004, 8, and 11. Did we acknowledge veterans like when I went through? Because I don't really remember having students stand up way back then. And he didn't either. And I raise this because I think that's something we've added in the last few years. I think we have talked about, I remember hearing you talk about acknowledging those who are going into the world of work, going to college, or going into national service. But I don't think until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, under your tenure, we actually had those students stand up and be recognized. So I want to push back on the notion in the community that we're not recognizing our future veterans, because I think that's something that under your tenure we began, and I think that's a really good thing, and that's a really important thing to underscore and to correct kind of in the narrative. But I disagree about the stoles, but it also, from my dialogue with you, as you often do, it seems that you've had a lot of meaningful conversations with parents, students around this. And I think sometimes, just like with our chief executive of the school department, Dr. Goff, we have really great communications with the people who these issues are most affecting. And I think those communications sometimes don't ripple out to the people who sometimes a given matter in the school department least affects, like myself, who is not commencing on June the 6th. So I firmly believe in a principal's ability to have autonomy in their decision making, even if sometimes I disagree with them. In this case, partially I do. But I've known you since I was a student up there when you were an assistant principal. And I know you act in good faith often, all of the time in your dealings, especially with the community and the students. In all of your conversations with me, you talk about not only what's best for the students, but where the students are. And I kind of wanted to reach out to Brendan at the beginning of this meeting. So I'm grateful for your self-reflection and a desire to kind of look at how we do things going forward. I think that's one important point to note. Secondly, I think it's important to note that things change. You know, graduation is now going to have a parade component, which it didn't have 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So I think this dialogue is a healthy one. I'm glad you're here today. I'm excited to go on June 5th, and I really wish.
We're going for the 6th, Bill.
6th.
Because we don't want the rain date, okay?
Okay, right, the 6th, fair enough. But I think the type of very simple dialogue we've had right now, I wish we could find more spaces. And hopefully in the coming years as a body, the 7 of us can find more spaces to have these type of dialogues. Because I think it's just so much more productive than like bashing each other online. Not that I don't love doing that, which I do. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for kind of having this simple dialogue with us, because I think it helps provide some community clarity. So that's all I got, Vance.
Thanks, Bill. Mark.
I want to add as well, I enjoy Walpole High School graduation. It's a recognition of the senior class. So for instance, Mr. Imbush, you don't give a speech. We don't have a speech from the chair of the school committee. We don't have a speech from the superintendent. It's all centered on the senior class. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here tonight, Steve. As Bill said, I think it really is an important piece of the community conversation. So we do appreciate it. And with that, I would say the floor is yours, Dr. Goff.
Yep, thank you, Stephen. There's some new COVID guidance update that's effective immediately. Today I met with both the nurse leader and the Board of Health to examine data surrounding COVID cases and the rate of in-school transmission. So effective tomorrow, we'll be relaxing our quarantine guidelines. This will still align with those of the state and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So in order to shorten the quarantine period, an individual may test now on day 5 after exposure. Upon receiving a negative result, may return to all activities on day 8. Well, I'll get this out tomorrow. We'll get this out tomorrow to families in written form. So I just want to let you hear this tonight since it's hot off the press. Second, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education also announced that, they received approval from the Executive Office of Health and Human Services to allow schools to, as you know, to no longer quarantine students who've been identified as a close contact between 3 and 6 feet. If you remember, we were doing close contact tracing. If a student tested positive at, less than 6 feet. So now what we can do is those students within 3 feet. So we move from 16 to 3 feet. So if you're less than 3 feet, now you would be deemed as a close contact. That's within a classroom and on a bus. However, if a student is identified as a close contact within 6 feet in a physical education class, cafeteria, recess, the student still needs to be quarantined. This guideline is both from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Department of Public Health. I'm still trying to figure out the reason for the recess because students still have masks on, but that is one that we cannot because that's both a DESE and DPH order. But I will be communicating to DESE next week to see if there's any way to relax that mandate. We'd also just like to remind families to please, because these guidelines are now relaxed, to monitor students' symptoms daily in accordance with what we've been doing all year. Any students with symptoms must stay home, test for COVID. Now, if a child's physician has determined that another illness may be causing the symptoms, they can write a note and state that the child does not need a COVID test, and then the child can return to school and the symptoms haven't. So Walpole Public School nurses must follow the guidelines from the DPH when determining if a student needs to be dismissed. They have very little flexibility in this manner. So like I mentioned, we'll be sending this information home tomorrow to families, detailing new changes along with the Mass DPH quarantine guidelines and the symptom checker. So the nurses will be reaching out. There may be some families that are in limbo that are like, do I still have to stay out for another week? Those nurses will be contacting those families individually to let them know when they're able to come back to school or rejoin activities. And last but certainly not least, I'm pleased and excited to announce that Justinia Castro has been appointed as Walpole Public Schools Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion / Metco Director for the 2021-2022 school year. As many of you know, Ms. Castro is currently our Metco Director for both Walpole and Foxborough school districts. Next year, we're not splitting her anymore. She'll be coming over and assume the full-time position at Walpole Public Schools. So she'll continue her role as Metco Director and also lead our educational community in the work of DEI. For those of you that may not know, I know Ms. Castro's been at school committee a couple of times this year, but for the last 4 years, she's done an excellent job in really leading Walpole Metco program. She's collaborated with support staff, consulted with teachers, and connects with outside agencies. Ms. Castro, who is already a valued member of our district's leadership team, has a passion for building positive relationships with the community, parents, staff, and students. We're excited that she's agreed to expand her leadership in the district as the DEI Director. And while our commitment to DEI requires an active investment by all of us, we could not be happier to have Justinia Castro lead our efforts as a district. So I hope you will join me in congratulating her. And we would be happy to, I'm talking about her now, but if school committee would like, we could bring her onto the next school committee, so you could officially welcome her, and she can talk a little bit more about her role, and you can ask her questions.
Great. That's a great report. And let me just see if there are questions, comments. Bill.
Through you, Madam Chair, just to the doctor's final point, I'd love to have Justinia come in at our next meeting. And I just think, as an organization, an educational organization, I am always excited, whether it be Dr. Goff, Mr. Hahn, Principal Limbush, Mr. Fisher, when high-quality people who work for us grow in the organization and move on and take greater responsibilities. I think that's something that's really a hallmark of the Walpole Public Schools, and we should really celebrate. And I'm so excited for the work she's going to take on in the district, but I'm also excited of the example it sets for all of our staff and administrators, that there's opportunity to grow in your responsibilities and position in our district, which is just I think an awesome thing and message to all of our staff.
Good point. Anything else? I also would second the idea of, it would be great to have her come to our next meeting if she, if you could make that happen.
Okay, so thanks. We'll schedule her then, the next meeting.
Sounds good. All right, and that gets us then to our next item under old business, which is the middle school building project. Mr. Breen?
So the most important news is that the select board has agreed by unanimous vote to put us on the ballot for next fall to get the override approved by the community. That's really only, I shouldn't say only, that is the big news. It's the only major thing to report. Aside from that, I would continue to emphasize to people to pay attention to the project. We have an awful lot of information on the school website, and it's going to come up to vote before you know it. And it'd be nice if people were well educated about the project.
Perfect. Any questions or comments for Mr. Breen? Sean, and then Kristen.
There is a video referenced, and I'm wondering if that could be put on the school building page, the video that Mr. Breen and Dr. Goff did, just so it's more accessible for everybody to see.
Good idea.
You stole my comment. It was a great video, and I think it's one that it really kind of encapsulated everything. So I think, if you could reshare that on the building website, that'd be great.
Definitely. Mary and I can working on that.
We're available for rent for any of your favorite projects. So
birthday party.
Yep.
Okay.
Birthday parties, you name it. Political campaigns.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay.
Oh, yeah, Mark.
Any other questions for Mark? If, Carrie, do you have one? Okay, sorry. The next item is subcommittee activity. I think we thoroughly went through the topic of the superintendent's evaluation committee. Were there any other subcommittees that wanted to report? Okay, then that gets us to our next item, which is citizens' comment. Are there any citizens here that might want to comment, Mr. Hahn?
There are citizens here, so we'll give a minute. If you, if a citizen would like to comment, if they raise the hand, which is available on the Zoom screen, I can open up your audio to make a comment. All right, I'm seeing none. Ms.
Okay,
Count.
then that gets us to approval of warrants, donations, and minutes. Sean, do you have the warrants?
I do indeed. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the following expense warrants for the amounts listed in your packet. Warrant numbers 221045, 221046.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Sean, a second by Kristen. I need to poll the committee. Bill?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And myself, Nancy, yes.
I would also like to make a motion to approve the following payroll warrants for the amounts listed in your packet. Those numbers are 2142PA, 2144PA.
Second.
We have a motion by Sean, a second by Carrie. Again, polling the committee. Bill?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And myself, Nancy, yes, 700. Thank you, Sean. And does somebody want to take donations?
Sure. I will make a motion to approve the following gifts and donations to Boyden School from the Russell K. McNeil Insurance Agency Incorporated to the Beverly Fusiel Media Center, $100. To Boyden School, Fisher School, Old Post Road School, and Johnson Middle School from Bay State Textiles Recycling, $202. To Boyden School from Nancy T. Ferris to the Multicultural Book Initiative, $50. To Boyden School from Philip F. Chekarowski and Lois B. Chekarowski to the Multicultural Book Initiative, $100. To Boyden School from Jennifer M. Morrison and Patrick J. Morrison for the Multicultural Book Initiative, $50. To Old Post Road School from the Old Post Road School PAC, playground equipment and books in the amount of $3,099. To Fisher School from the Backbod Giving Fund, general donation in the amount of $25. And to Johnson Middle School from Box Tops for Education, general donation in the amount of $3.
Second.
Great. We have a motion by Carrie, and I'm not sure, was that Kristen for the second? Okay, and a second by Kristen. Polling the committee, Bill?
Aye.
Jen?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And myself, Nancy, yes, 700 with gratitude. And the last item will be minutes that need to get approved.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the April 29th, 2021 executive session meeting minutes and the April 29th, 2021 school committee meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Bill and a second by Kristen. Again, I'll poll the committee. Bill?
Aye.
Jen?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And myself, Nancy, yes, 700. Thank you for everybody who was listening. Our next meeting will be 2 weeks from now, May 27th. And Mark Green, we need you.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
A motion by Mark, a second by Bill. Quick roll call. Bill?
Aye.
Jen?
Yeah.
Carrie?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And myself, Nancy, yes. Thank you, and have a good rest of the month of May, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night.